Hello and welcome to this brand new edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Kahn. As always, we have a packed show for you, and our big focus is on the US presidential elections with the Iowa caucuses kicking off the race. The US presidential race for 2024 has officially kicked off, and the Iowa Republican caucuses that marked the beginning of this race were a Donald Trump show all the way. The former president has had a landslide win, affirming his dominant position in the 2024 Republican primary field and setting himself up for a potential rematch with President Joe Biden in November this year. Florida Governor DeSantis, meanwhile, managed to edge out his closest rival, former North Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, winning second place in Iowa, and Indian-American entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who finished fourth, has dropped out of the US presidential race and predictably endorsed Trump. The focus now shifts to next week's primary in New Hampshire. Let's examine these developments in greater detail to understand what a Trump win in Iowa means for his second bid for the White House. Most observers say Trump has demonstrated beyond any doubt that it's still his Republican Party and he continues to enjoy a vice-like grip over it. The former president has won the Iowa Republican caucuses by an unprecedented margin, kickstarting his bid to win his party's third consecutive presidential nomination. He did so despite skipping the GOP primary debates and all shoe leather work. The Republican presidential candidates are vying to take on President Biden in November, but first they're competing in the GOP primaries and caucuses, which begin in January, to emerge as the party's nominee. The first event of the Republican primary calendar, the Iowa caucuses, took place on Monday. Next up is the New Hampshire primary. The results in Iowa have demonstrated how devoted Republicans remain to Trump amid his highly unusual campaign, one being waged between court appearances as he battles 4 indictments, including charges tied to his efforts to subvert the 2020 presidential election. As he celebrated his historic win in Des Moines, Iowa's capital, on Monday night, Trump departed from his usual insults for his rivals, instead congratulating DeSantis, Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy for their performances and describing all three as very smart people, very capable people. But analysts say his message to his opponents couldn't have been clearer. It's time to get out and get on board. Trump said, "It's just so important and I want to make that a very big part of our message. We're going to come together. It's going to happen soon." With Ramaswamy suspending his campaign, it's now a 3-horse race. But it's not lost on anyone that Trump is way ahead of the rest. The former president has tipped 50% of the vote in Iowa, and neither DeSantis nor Haley delivered a definitive second-place finish. Haley is within single digits of Trump in New Hampshire. She's hoping to use it as a launch pad to effectively clear the field and position herself as the party's lone Trump alternative. Let's now look at the kind of support Trump has received so far. 53% of white evangelical Christians backed Trump, compared to DeSantis' 27% and Haley's 13%, figures that underscore why Trump is the huge favorite in South Carolina, where evangelicals make up a huge share of the party's primary electorate, even though it's Haley's home state. College graduates split somewhat evenly between Trump, Haley and DeSantis, but Trump dominated those without a college degree with 67% support. Haley argues that the majority of Americans disapprove of both the current president and the former president and insists that her campaign is the last best hope of stopping the Trump-Biden nightmare, as she put it. Now, Trump's huge win in the Iowa caucuses enshrines one of the most astonishing comebacks in American political history. Losing one-term presidents almost never mount subsequent successful primary campaigns, much less pull off landslides that demonstrate utter dominance of their party. Trump transformed the GOP in his populist, nationalistic, nihilistic image in 2016 by claiming 50% of the vote in the biggest win in caucus history, putting him on course to his third consecutive nomination. Trump has shown that 8 years after his outsider presidential win, the current GOP is entirely his party. Trump said the big night is going to be November when we take back our country. And the former president's rebound is more stunning for one more reason. He won despite 91 criminal charges against him and other legal entanglements that threaten his freedom and his fortune. In a head-spinning turn of events in these unprecedented times, Trump is expected to show up in a courtroom in Manhattan later today for the opening of a defamation trial. Now consider this. Nearly half of the Republican voters, according to a recent media poll, 44% to be precise, have said that they consider themselves to be part of the MAGA or Make America Great Again movement. Two-thirds of Republican voters don't think President Biden's 2020 victory was legitimate, despite all evidence to the contrary. Most don't see a criminal conviction, if there is one, as something that should disqualify Trump from office. It is almost as if his 2020 loss has been erased in the minds of many Republicans who still view Trump as their president. That gives him the unique distinction of running simultaneously as an incumbent, who Republicans have already seen as president, and as an insurgent trying to topple Biden. On Monday, Trump shared a video for his 2024 US presidential campaign, claiming God created him to be the caretaker of the Americans. In the nearly 3-minute video that also features the 77-year-old leader's childhood picture, the narrator says, "And on 14th June 1946, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, 'I need a caretaker,' so God gave us Trump." The narrator goes on to say, "God said, 'I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, fix this country, work all day, fight the Marxists, eat supper, then go to the Oval Office and stay past midnight at a meeting of the states, so God made Trump. God said, I need somebody who will be strong and courageous, who will not be afraid or terrified of the wolves when they attack. A man who cares for the flock, a shepherd to mankind who won't ever leave or forsake them," says the video. Remember, Trump's victory has been a huge and a broad one. He won the young and the old, men and women. He also won over the evangelical and hard-right conservative voters who he had difficulty winning in 2016. Typically, defeated presidential candidates, as we said, fade from memory, never able to shake the taint of the loss. Trump, however, has managed to convince Republicans in Iowa and nationally that he never lost. A large majority of caucus goers in Iowa say they believe Trump was the actual winner of the 2020 presidential election, a number that has increased to 90% amongst Trump supporters in recent times. His Iowa win in the larger context of modern American politics is extraordinary. 3 years ago, he ended his first presidential term under a cloud of controversy. His campaign to challenge his loss to Democrat Joe Biden, culminating in the 6th January Capitol riot. He faces 2 criminal trials stemming from those actions, yet for his supporters, none of that seems to matter. Therefore, is a Trump-Biden rematch on the 5th of November 2024 now almost a foregone conclusion? With many predicting that the Republican frontrunner could prove to be a more formidable adversary for the Democrats than earlier expected, is Trump in a position to defeat the incumbent president the way Biden did in 2020?
Well, I want to thank everybody. This has been some period of time, and most importantly, we want to thank the great people of Iowa. Thank you. We love you all. What a turnout, what a crowd. And I really think this is time now for everybody, our country, to come together. We want to come together, whether it's Republican or Democrat or liberal or conservative. It would be so nice if we could come together and straighten out the world and straighten out the problems and straighten out all of the death and destruction that we're witnessing. It's practically never been like this. It's just so important, and I want to make that a very big part of our message. We're going to come together. It's going to happen soon, too. It's going to happen soon. This has been an incredible experience. The people have been, this is the 3rd time we've won, but this is the biggest one. They said, well, if you win by 12%, that's a big win. That's going to be very hard to do. Well, I think we more than doubled that, I guess, tripled it maybe. Same thing with the Congress, men and women. We have tremendous, much more than anybody probably. I want to congratulate Ron and Nikki for having a good time together. We're all having a good time together. And I think they both actually did very well. I really do. I think they both did very well. We don't even know what the outcome of second place is. We're going to drill, baby, drill right away. Yeah. Drill, baby, drill. We're going to seal up the border. Because right now we have an invasion. We have an invasion of millions and millions of people that are coming into our country. I can't imagine why they think that's a good thing. It's a very bad thing. I think it's a group of people that are probably larger in number than New York State. And we can't have that. We can't have that. It's not sustainable as a country. It's horrible. And you know, they're coming from prisons and jails. They're coming from all over. They're coming from countries that most people have never heard of. And they're coming from mental institutions and insane asylums. They're being emptied out into our country. And they're terrorists. Many terrorists are coming in. You know, in 2019, I saw just recently on a poll, they had none in 2019, no terrorists. Now, I even say there's got to be some, but they have none. And then as soon as this group took over, they have hundreds and hundreds of terrorists coming in, known terrorists, some of them really bad. They only want to see one thing. They want our country to come back. They're embarrassed by what's going on. Our country is laughed at. All over the world, they're laughing at us. And they want our country to come back. They want America, you know, they want us to be great again. It's a very simple. MAGA, make America great again. And America first. America first is a very important part of MAGA. The big night is going to be in November when we take back our country, and truly, we do make our country great again. Thank you very much, everybody. Great honor. Thank you very much.
I want to congratulate President Trump on his win tonight. We have had an amazing 11 months here in the Hawkeye State. I came to Iowa early and often, and I kept coming back, even though the cold weather is brutal. Endorsement in Iowa, he believed in us when not a lot of people did. At one point in this campaign, there were 14 of us running. I was at 2% in the polls. But tonight, Iowa did what Iowa always does so well. The pundits will analyze the results from every angle. We get that. But when you look at how we're doing in New Hampshire, in South Carolina, and beyond, I can safely say tonight, Iowa made this Republican primary a two-person race. Our campaign is the last best hope of stopping the Trump-Biden nightmare. But it's more than that. Republicans have lost the popular vote in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections. That's nothing to be proud of. We should want to earn the support of a majority of Americans. Tonight, I will be back in the great state of New Hampshire. And the question before Americans is now very clear. Do you want more of the same? Or do you want a new generation of conservative leadership?
They even called the election before people even got a chance to vote. But they were just so excited about the fact that they were predicting that we wouldn't be able to get our ticket punched here out of Iowa. But I can tell you, because of your support, in spite of all of that they threw at us, everyone against us, we've got our ticket punched out of Iowa. We represent a chance to reverse the madness that we've seen in this country, to reverse the decline of this country, and to give this country a new birth of freedom and a restoration of sanity. That's what we are going to do. We have a lot of work to do, but I can tell you this, as the next president of the United States, I am going to get the job done for this country. I am not going to make any excuses, and I guarantee you this, I will not let you down. Thank you all. God bless.
All right. So we are going to dissect in detail with our panel of experts what Trump's big Iowa win means for his presidential campaign and for the US presidential elections slated to be held on the 5th of November this year. Joining me on Global Lens tonight, Professor Harsh V. Pant, Vice President, Studies in Foreign Policy at the Observer Research Foundation. Joining us live from Delhi NCR, Ambassador Kahn Sharma, former Indian diplomat, also joining us from Delhi tonight. Irina Sukuman, National Security and Geopolitical Analyst, joining us live from New York. And a little later on the show, we are hoping to be joined by Pramit Pal Chaudhary, Foreign Affairs Analyst. Before I go across to my guests, I need to slip into a quick break, but please don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
"392 pillars, 44 doors." Prime Minister prays ahead of the big moment. Special rituals in Ayodhya. All eyes on Ram Lala.
पूरी दुनिया उत्सुकता के साथ 22 जनवरी के ऐतिहासिक क्षण का इंतजार कर रही है।
Pran Pratishtha. Rolling coverage. Only on News9 Live.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Let's go straight across to our guest. Professor Harsh Pant, welcome to Global Lens. Let me begin with you. 91 criminal charges, 2 impeachments, a very strong possibility that he could in fact be convicted in one of the multiple cases that he faces. A massive loss to Joe Biden in 2020 while he was sitting president. Yet, nothing seems to matter to Trump supporters. As we have seen with the Iowa caucuses, Trump has in a sense made history. He's won by an unprecedented margin, and it's almost as if the 2020 loss never happened. What does this say about the Trump phenomenon and his growing tribe of supporters?
I think it says many things, but I think one thing that it certainly says is that America and American voters, they are certainly looking at this election through a very different lens than perhaps a lot of us who are sitting outside and wondering as to what is going on. Because as you recounted, there are issues and issues on which Trump can be indicted. Trump can be, talked off as one of the most callous presidents of the U.S., ex-presidents of the U.S. There are charges of, sexual misdemeanor. There are charges of, challenging the very basis of American Constitution. And yet there are these American voters who I think look at him still as a candidate that talks their language. That is still, after being in office for 4 years, still not seen as a mainstream political candidate. He still is seen as a rebel, and he's still seen as one who challenges conventional wisdom. And these are, I think, voters who are troubled by what is happening in America on foreign policy front, on immigration front, on economic policy front. And let's also be honest that Mr. Biden has not done so badly. The economic numbers from the US are not bad. So in the past, we used to say, look, it's the economy is stupid. But at this time, once again, Trump has been able to mobilize his voters in ways that are quite unprecedented. And I think to have, this is a phenomenon to have a president who was booted out and then he comes back with all the charges hanging against him. He makes those charges almost a gift. He's mobilizing people that look, I'm not being allowed to run. Therefore, you have to ensure that I run. And people are in Iowa have said that, look, we want him to run. So I think, whether or not he becomes a president remains to be seen. But certainly a large part of the US is sympathetic to him and is sympathetic to his views and is looking at him as a probable, one of the most probable candidates at the moment. Now, again, Nikki Haley has done well from where she was a few months back. DeSantis this time has won. So we will see what the consolidation looks like. But certainly, I think Iowa caucuses and the kind of resounding victory that Trump has gives him enormous momentum as he moves into the second phase of these Republican primaries.
All right, not only do these wins give him enormous momentum, many have already said that it is going to be a Biden versus Trump rematch. It is almost done and dusted. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis might as well pack their bags and go back home. But I found what you said interesting, that Donald Trump challenges conventional wisdom, because it's very hard for most of us to understand this phenomenon. Let me now go across to Ambassador Shilkant Sharma. Ambassador Sharma, it is well known that for a sitting president to lose an election usually means the end of the road, the end of their political career. They're not known to make comebacks. But look at this. Donald Trump has claimed 51% of the vote in the Iowa caucuses, making it the biggest win in caucus history in the United States of America. And if you look at some of the recent entrance polls, including the one conducted by CNN, it says that half of the Republican voters consider themselves to be part of MAGA movement. 2/3 of them actually believe President Biden never won the 2020 election, despite all evidence to the contrary. And most of these Republicans also seem to believe that a criminal conviction will not disqualify Trump from office. It's as if the 2020 electoral loss has been completely erased from the minds of Trump supporters. For many of them, it may as well be Donald Trump, the current president of the United States of America, seeking re-election. How do you see this?
Well, this Iowa caucus has, its result has been staggering. The clearly unprecedented and this kind of a percentage that he's got. And his rivals within the GOP are, they're showing their diffidence now. And it will not be a surprise if very soon they will surrender to him, because none of them has, throughout these past months, has come anywhere close to mounting a challenge to him. He stoutly, refused to join the debates which were done, and he knew that these debates are meaningless. And this caucus shows that people don't care. And what you said is true, that his supporters seem to be getting stronger and larger in number as he progresses. And the more he target him, more he's targeted, the stronger he becomes. So nothing seems to stick, on him, all these charges. And the way he's lined up his campaign, even if there is something which comes up, he's bound to blame it on these legal, as he says in his own language, these challenges. He dismisses them as unfair. And the other thing is that, Supreme Court, he has already in his time packed it with his supporters. And you see them, they have been taking decisions, the Supreme Court judges have been taking decisions which conform to the GOP line and actually to the extreme right line.
Well, it is a 6-3 conservative majority, whether anyone likes it or not. And 3 of the Supreme Court judges were appointed by Trump himself.
Yes, so they are like Colorado, for instance, when it comes to Supreme Court, it won't be a surprise that they are just, dismissed. And the same way, any of these things which they come to the Supreme Court, like 8th of February or 21st of March, when these things come up, it could be, it will not be surprised if the Supreme Court just puts them aside.
Okay.
So,
And also, fact of the matter is that this is an issue on which the Constitution of the United States seems to be rather ambivalent, almost silent, because this is unprecedented. That country has never faced a scenario like this before, where there is a possibility that a man who may well end up getting elected as the next president of the United States could also have a conviction in a criminal case, may also be sentenced to jail. And I don't think anybody in the United States really knows what's going to happen in that scenario. Since Professor Harsh Pant has to leave the show a few minutes from now, so if I could come back to you, could we actually see a scenario as bizarre as that unfolding in the United States of America? You have the next president who comes back to office with a thumping majority, still gets convicted in one of the criminal cases against him and is sentenced to jail. And then, of course, there's been speculation for the longest time about whether you're going to have a situation where Donald Trump decides to pardon himself. It's almost as if all bets are off.
Yes, I think it would be, it would be in some kind of a fictional narrative if it were not happening in front of our own eyes. And so I think we are looking at the American democracy journeying through almost a virtual reality phase. Here when Trump, you would recall, had emerged on the political scene, people used to joke about him as being a TV personality, and no one gave him any chance of doing anything of consequence on the political stage. And yet here we are 8 years down the line, still discussing what he can and cannot do with the systems. But I would, an important point, Neha, is perhaps what can happen to the American institutional fabric, which I think is a very serious problem. And all the things that you have pointed out that we don't know. Really, we are in America is in uncharted waters. I think America has been in uncharted waters ever since the January 6, 2020, insurrection kind of an episode that happened, which got Trump in some ways implicit sanctions. In that case, what we are looking today is the institutional fabric of American democracy withering away in front of our own eyes. That there are no checks and balances in the system. That here you have a person who has multiple, challenges, who is facing multiple challenges, and yet in some very unique ways he's able to mobilize political support for him. Now, what do you do under such circumstances? Are there enough institutional frameworks available to manage a democracy passing through these turbulent times? And I think this is a lesson for America and for other democracies also to engage with this question: what happens, after such a scenario really becomes a reality? And in this particular case, America is passing through such a tumultuous phase because domestic polarization is very huge. I mean, we are at the moment, we are seeing the exuberance of Trump supporters, but there are others on the other end of the political spectrum that almost hate him with equal, potency. So what happens then when these two, constituencies, communities start looking at America as two distinct entities and start disengaging from each other? So I think there are huge questions in front of America, and given America's role in the world, huge questions as to what America will or will not be able to do in its foreign policy realm. And that is, I think, something that we also should be engaged with.
Absolutely. It's as if we're talking about a dystopian future that could very well become America and the world's reality before the end of 2024. And not only is America an uncharted territory, the irony is Big Brother, the United States, the oldest democracy in the world that has for years and decades now been lecturing the rest of the world about the virtues of democracy, how to hold free and fair elections, will probably need to turn the lens inwards as it faces its biggest challenge to its democracy in its entire history. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I need to slip into another quick break here on Global Lens. Please don't go anywhere. We will be back with lots more.
Ram's Ayodhya rebuilt. Ram Lala's Pran Pratishtha. Countdown to January 22nd. Dateline Ayodhya. Catch the mega coverage only on News9 Live.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
And the state has not been able to handle that part of its own responsibilities.
It's not the fiefdom of politicians. They owe it to the people.
Everybody is as good a citizen as we.
As a Telangana person, I will not accept his leadership.
What was worrying was the stories that were coming from the Congress that there was internal sabotage.
You can't straight away give 12%. There is no provision.
Exactly.
You need to do a lot of other things.
Yeah, just because they are tribal, everyone does it.
Wait.
That's my problem. How do ordinary folks deal with this? Think about it.
Pakistani spy agency ISI's sinister plan to target India. Training women to honey trap top civil and military officials. Counter honey trapping ops initiated by India. But gullible victims still caught in the web. Top military intelligence experts break down the web of deception. Colonel Hani Bakshi explains the phenomena of honey trap.
जहाँ पे भी आपको लगेगा, उनको लगेगा कि there is a person who is susceptible to women, who's making a lot of women friends on the social media. That is where they will make a spoof account and then start luring the person.
Colonel Pavitran Rajan decodes the psyche of the victim and the predator.
But when you go up the chain, no one enforces it to people at the top. That disciplinary regime and the security regime is not enforced at the top. And they usually have a public profile where it is much more easier to approach that person.
A News9 special on how modern technology has added teeth to the ancient spying tactic.
Our story takes you inside Pakistan's honey trap machine.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're discussing the US presidential race that has kicked off with the Iowa caucuses, and Trump has made history. All right, let me go back to my guest, Professor Harsh Pant. Let me come back to you at this point. Let's assume for a moment that we are going to see a Trump-Biden rematch on the 5th of November this year, as is being predicted by many, especially after the Iowa caucuses. My question is that, it would be safe to say that President Biden's approval ratings have been plummeting. Even many Democrats are worried about his age. His immigration policies, as we know, have been very unpopular. And his unstinting support to the Israel-Hamas war amid the growing death toll in Gaza has also made a lot of Democrats very uncomfortable with the position taken by the Biden administration. Therefore, my question to you is, if there is a Trump-Biden rematch, how worried do you think the Democrats need to be?
I would say very worried, and I think there are already signs that the fatigue with Mr. Biden is becoming a real liability for the Democrats, because, as you pointed out, there are a number of issues on which he's dragging the Democrats down. But, there is, when you have a Biden and Trump rematch, what can also happen is that the polarization that we were discussing earlier may also mean that those who oppose Mr. Trump can also be mobilized accordingly. That those who, for example, believe that Mr. Trump is going to be a very big danger to American democracy can also be mobilized around Biden. That would be the expectation on the Biden side as of now, that for all the challenges that Mr. Biden faces, the fact that it might be a Biden-Trump rematch, and the fact that Mr. Biden can be shown at a national level to have a slightly upper hand against Mr. Trump might mobilize the Democrats. Now, that's again a big if. But certainly there is a possibility that those who oppose Mr. Trump might feel that this is a do or die battle for them, and they might also be mobilized. So I think ultimately the battle would come down to mobilizing the bases. Democrats will have to mobilize their own base, and the Republicans, of course, will be mobilized because you have Mr. Trump on the ticket once again. So that would become a battle of the bases, which the two bases would come up, and they would have to figure out who can mobilize and who can bring out the voters more to the polling booth on November the 5th. So I think that would make that an interesting, election. But certainly if that happens, and at the moment, Mr. Biden is not really the rallying point around the Democrats. There are too many issues on which they are disjointed, divided, and it's unlikely that Israel war is going to die out anytime soon. It's unlikely that immigration policies are going to be revised anytime soon. So I think that the tensions within the Democrats will be out in the open, whereas Republicans, if they can coalesce around, once Mr. Trump is anointed as the probable candidate, if they can rally around Mr. Trump, then they will have an upper hand. So I do think that at the moment, as trends look like, Mr. Trump seems to have an upper hand. But but we are predicating all of this on the fact that Mr. Trump will continue to have good, nights after nights on these caucuses as he moves forward. We know from past experiences that often Iowa caucuses, the results of Iowa caucuses have been reversed by subsequent caucuses. So we'll have to wait and watch New Hampshire, and particularly I think March Super Tuesday, which is a big, big Tuesday when multiple states converge with their primaries. I think that would be the date when perhaps the Republican nominee would be decided. And at this point, I think both Nikki Haley and DeSantis would be working out how they get there, or how they at least coalesce their voters to ensure that they put up a fight against Mr. Trump.
Nikki Haley is, of course, hoping that she can clear the field and emerge as the lone alternative to Trump in next week's New Hampshire primary. Will that really happen? We'll have to wait and see. But Irina Sukuman, let me come to you now, and thank you for waiting patiently. Many polls have indicated that Trump has actually been leading President Biden, with the latter becoming more and more popular for a variety of reasons, some of which we've listed. Now we've seen Trump making history with his landslide win in the Iowa caucuses, and many have gone as far as to say it's all done and dusted. We know that Trump is going to be the Republican candidate to take on President Biden. What are the reactions coming into the Iowa caucuses from the Democrats? Do you think they would be really worried after this?
Quite frankly, Iowa is not necessarily an overall indicator. Historically, many of the candidates who went on to win Iowa ended up not becoming the nominees, much less the presidents. That said, the overall trajectory of Trump's dynamic so far indicates that he is most likely going to be the nominee of the Republican Party, unless there are sudden changes down the road. But that doesn't mean that the Democrats are necessarily worried. First of all, the people who are voting in the primaries are the most hardcore of activists. They're not necessarily reflective of the all turnout of the party. And turnout matters when it comes to general elections, and also mobilizing independents matters even more, because the Republicans are only about 1/3 of the country, and the major chunk of the voters in the general elections are not registered with either party, and they will not necessarily support Trump if he's convicted on multiple charges, for instance. That said, we also cannot be guaranteed that Biden will remain the Democratic nominee. As of now, he's certainly positioned that way, and and incumbents do have an inherent advantage of their office, but he is losing in popularity. There have been talks within the Democratic Party criticizing his age, his dynamism, and of course his policies, which are quite unpopular and resulted in a lot of pushback. So will they actually get Biden to step aside last minute and nominate a new candidate very close to the elections? We don't know, but if they did, that would certainly be a huge blow to the Republicans who are preparing Trump to fight Joe Biden and not anybody else. And their entire strategy is based on this current polling against Joe Biden. But first of all, many things could change. There could be unexpected crisis. And we don't know what the reaction is going to be to Trump's conviction. Actually, many of his supporters don't believe he's done anything wrong and don't necessarily believe that he will be convicted due to the past failures of the Democratic attacks against him. And of course, if he is to be challenged by a younger Democratic candidate with no record of foreign policy failures like Biden, that would be an entirely different ballgame. And I think at that point, the Republicans will have to ask themselves.
That would be quite a curveball, I must say. And as we wrap up this conversation, because I'm running out of time, I'll put that question to Ambassador Sharma. Ambassador Sharma, if there were to be a Biden-Trump rematch on the 5th of November, going by how things stand today, and I know a lot can change between now and November, who do you think has a distinct edge? And as the months pass by, and if Trump's support base keeps growing, do you think there is the outside chance of the Democrats even thinking of an alternative to President Biden to take on Trump?
I think if they do so, that show a sense of already an implicit defeat,
Yes, that would be defeatist.
You don't change horses midstream, and he's already announced his candidature, and he's been there on the rostrum for some time. So it'll be, I think, tactless on the part of Democrats to do that. I don't think that is possible. And you could see like this that Trump, in his Iowa speech, has come back on two main points about immigration. He has really made a pitch, and then he's again talking, getting everyone together and come together. Now that might be the standard politicians waffle, that motherhood kind of statements. But it's possible that he's now changing tack to first force on immigration so that his base is completely behind him. And then would reach out, because American system is such that the states in the federal system, even if you have a president, the states still maintain a lot of freedom. So you cannot really railroad, get everyone together unless you have cooperation. So, and he's learned his lesson from the first term. So there are a number of things he might be doing. So here is a person who's been preparing, and the pattern of the last several months has been that his strength is growing.
It keeps growing. Every time there is a new legal setback to him, his support base seems to grow. That is the inexplicable phenomenon called Donald Trump. I'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much to my guests, Irina Sukuman, Ambassador Sharma, and Professor Harsh Pant, for joining me on Global Lens tonight.
Thank you.
All right, let's now turn our attention to the Israel-Hamas war and the growing tensions in the Middle East. Iran's Revolutionary Guards on Monday launched ballistic missiles at what it claimed was a spy base for Israel's intelligence agency Mossad in northern Iraq and at anti-Iran terror groups in Syria in the latest escalation of hostilities that further risk spiraling into a wider regional conflict. The strikes have been condemned by the US as reckless and imprecise. Iranian forces said the midnight missile strike in Iraq destroyed one of the main espionage headquarters of Israel in Erbil, capital of the semi-autonomous Kurdistan region, in response to what they said were Israeli attacks that killed Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders and members of the Iranian Resistance Front. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC, has said in a statement, this headquarters has been the center for developing espionage operations and planning terrorist attacks in the region. and Iran in particular. The IRGC also said it struck several locations in Erbil and claimed to target sites of Iranian opposition groups. At least 4 civilians were killed and 6 others injured in this attack. A large villa belonging to a well-known Kurdish businessman was also destroyed in this attack, though there were no reports of any casualties. The IRGC has also said it fired ballistic missiles at the bases of anti-Iran terror groups in occupied territories of Syria. It claimed the targets were involved in the recent twin bombings in the city of Kerman during a memorial ceremony for the slain Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani that left close to 200 people dead and many others wounded. ISIS had claimed responsibility for those deadly twin blasts near Soleimani's burial site and what was the deadliest attack in Iran since its 1979 revolution. In the statement, the IRGC also said it identified and destroyed a number of key terror commanders and elements, especially Daesh or ISIS in the occupied territory of Syria, by firing a number of ballistic missiles. A US official said initial indications of Iran's missile attacks showed this was a reckless and imprecise set of strikes. Kurdistan Region Prime Minister Masroor Barzani called on his partners in the international community not to remain silent in the face of repeated attacks against the people of Kurdistan. Iran's attacks will further raise fears that Israel's war in Gaza could widen into a full-scale war in the Middle East with grave humanitarian, political and economic consequences. Israel's relentless bombing of Gaza in response to Hamas's 7th October terror attacks has killed more than 24,000 people, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, and wrought widespread devastation as civilians live with the threat of imminent death either by an airstrike, starvation or disease. The conflict has escalated hostilities across the region with Iran's allies and proxies, the so-called Axis of Resistance, launching attacks on Israeli forces and its allies. US forces last week sank 3 boats belonging to Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels in the Red Sea, and the US and UK launched strikes against Houthi targets in Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen, aimed at halting a series of attacks on commercial shipping. On Monday, a Houthi missile hit a US-owned cargo ship in the Red Sea, marking what appears to be the first time the militants have successfully struck a US-owned or operated ship. Last week, the US carried out a strike in Baghdad that killed a leader from an Iran-backed proxy group that Washington blamed for attacks against US personnel in the region. US troops in Iraq and Syria have repeatedly come under rocket and drone attacks from Tehran's proxies. Fighting has intensified between Israel and the powerful Iran-backed group Hezbollah across the Lebanon border. On Sunday, Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah vowed to press on with confrontations with Israeli forces on the Lebanon border until the end of the Israeli offensive in Gaza. Last week, a senior Hezbollah commander was killed in an Israeli drone strike on his car in southern Lebanon. Wissam Tawil is the most senior member of the Shiite militant group to be killed in an Israeli strike since Hezbollah and Israel began trading fire across the Lebanese-Israeli border on the 8th of October. Israel is also suspected of carrying out an attack on high-ranking Hamas leader Saleh al-Aruri in Beirut, sparking fury amongst Hezbollah leaders who control the area where he was killed.
U.S. is in Iraq on invitation of the Iraqi government, and their mission is to fight terrorism. We don't think that terrorism has ended, and last night's event is an indication that instability in the region is still very much at stake, and so we need an international cooperation and support to bring more stability to Iraq and the region as a whole. What's surprising, we are not a part of this conflict. We don't know why Iran is retaliating against civilians of Kurdistan, especially in Erbil. We have no animosity towards any of our neighbors, especially Iran. This has been another attack that in the past few years, there have been other attacks also against Kurdistan. We don't know what the reasons are, but all of the allegations that they have made are baseless. We hope that the federal government in Iraq and the international community will take all the measures necessary to stop the repetition of these attacks in the future.
And finally, as we wrap up this edition of Global Lens, let's tell you what happened at the Emmy Awards last night. Time for a complete lowdown now on television's biggest night. With 6 awards each, the Roy clan of Succession and the Found family of The Bear were the Emmys' biggest winners. The HBO family dramedy and FX Comedy dominated the 75th Primetime Emmy Awards, including a Best Drama win for Succession and a Best Comedy win for The Bear. But perhaps the biggest winner of the night was Sir Elton John, who joined the ultra-exclusive EGOT Club with his win for Outstanding Variety Special for Elton John, Farewell from Dodger Stadium. Another series that enjoyed Emmy Gold is Netflix's Beef, which earned 5 awards. The Lee Sung-jin helmed mini-series, which won Best Limited Anthology Series Award, earned stars Ali Wong and Steven Yeun awards for lead actress and lead actor in a limited series television movie. Succession and The Last of Us, HBO's post-apocalyptic action drama, were the top contenders this year, entering the show with 27 and 24 nominations, respectively. This year's Emmy Awards were postponed from the 18th of September, I beg your pardon, due to the dual writers and actors strikes. The pause marked the most significant delay for the Emmys since 2001. After a 4-month delay, the 75th Annual Emmy Awards finally got around to a night teeming with nostalgia and near sweeps, with Succession, The Bear and Beef dominating their respective categories. Now, Succession and The Bear each took home 6 awards, with Beef right behind them at 5. The HBO drama received its 3rd Emmy in 4 seasons for its swan song year, having been deprived a win only opposite the last season of another HBO heavyweight, Game of Thrones. Succession filled out its total with wins for Kieran Culkin and Sarah Snook, each of whom stepped up into the lead category this year after previously submitting themselves as supporting players. They delivered teary-eyed acceptance speeches and were joined by 2-time winner Matthew McFadyen with additional nods for writing and directing. The Bear, meanwhile, ranked as this year's most honoured programme with 10 awards in all, including 4 previous wins at the Creative Arts Emmys, primarily devoted to technical areas like cinematography and sound. Overall, HBO Max amassed 31 statuettes this award cycle, followed by Netflix with 22 and 16 for FX. Streaming services Apple TV and Disney followed with 10 and 9 respectively. The evening stood out in several ways, including its diversity with a number of Black and Asian winners. The latter thanks to the Netflix limited series Beef, honoured with 5 awards, including stars Ali Wong and Steven Yeun writing and directing. With its trio of technical wins at earlier Emmy presentations, the show drove away with 8 awards in all. Host Anthony Anderson quipped, "This is like Martin Luther King Day and Juneteenth all rolled into one." Brunson became the first Black woman recognized as lead comedy actress in more than 4 decades since Isabel Sanford of The Jeffersons. Edaberry was quickly joined by Jeremy Allen White and Ebon Moss-Bachrach for The Bear, the FX show that has steamrolled its way through this month's awards ceremonies, while both drama supporting nods went to repeat winners. Jennifer Coolidge claimed another Emmy for The White Lotus, this time competing as a drama series, and McFadyen kicking off the night for Succession. Despite switching categories after 7 consecutive wins in the late-night variety competition, last week, Tonight with John Oliver continued its winning ways in the category opposite Saturday Night Live, also collecting an 8th straight writing trophy. The shift did open the door for a new late-night king, The Daily Show with Trevor Noah in Noah's final season as host of the Comedy Central series, roughly 13 months after his farewell show. And in a historic moment, Elton John also joined the elite ranks of EGOTs, those who have won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar and a Tony for his Disney farewell concert special. Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Hope you enjoyed watching this show. Do join us again at the same time tomorrow. Good night.
A lot of similarities between Baron Dash and Oliver Kahn.
Champions like him are not born every day.
And I also like this format that is not only question and answer.
After 15 years, football legend Oliver Kahn returns to India. 15 years ago, he was here for his farewell match. This time, the former German goalkeeper and Bundesliga star is a guest on season 2 of the award-winning show Dialogue with Barun Das. Dialogue with Barun Das is a highly acclaimed talk show that has taken the Indian media industry by storm.
It is a platform where two thinking individuals, exchange their ideas.
Hosted by Barun Das, one of India's best-known business leaders, Dialogue is a cerebral conversation with a legend or a legend in the making. And football superstar Oliver Kahn is one of the biggest legends of the sport.
If you have to define German football royalty, Oliver Kahn will be one of the top 5 names to come to my mind.
Being a goalkeeper, Oliver Kahn got that state of glamour parallel to a striker.
So in 1982, Schumacher was the Germany goalkeeper. After that, Schumacher, so many goalkeepers came, but Oliver Kahn was the best goalkeeper.
He can be a dormant volcano, he can be an active volcano. The fact is, his aggression defines football.
And one of the best goalkeepers ever in world football.
And the way he has shouldered the responsibilities of the German football team makes Oliver Kahn a very unique person.
In 2008, he played his last football match, and that was also against Mohun Bagan.
Probably never in his life did he witness 130,000 people watching his farewell game. It's a very, very emotional connect, not only for Oliver Kahn, but many footballers.
His confidence level, his attitude, his body language is different.
You get a standing ovation. Probably Oliver Kahn would have never got this in his life.
And this Oliver Kahn match was a historic moment in the Mumbai history.
Legends from the worlds of entertainment, sports and business converge at the show that is inspiring and thought-provoking. The USP of the show is its originality and simplicity. A power-packed season 2 is on the cards.
This is the first time I'm ever in this kind of format having a dialogue. You know, it's like having a dialogue about certain diverse topics, because all the interviews which I normally do are only about, very film-centric.
I enjoyed it. It was a heartfelt conversation. We discussed and touched on a lot of topics, which got me a lot of good memories back, and also some memories which are very emotional for me. But I wish Barun Das all the best and keep up the good work.
A lot of similarities between Barun Das and Oliver Kahn, that there are a lot of similarities between sport and business. And I also like this format that is not only question and answer. So we had a really relaxing conversation, and I felt very comfortable, and yes, hopefully we can repeat it again in the near future.
Season 2, I think, would build on season 1. The list of guests or the profiles of the guests possibly would be even a few notches higher. So getting to speak to them, getting to bounce off my ideas with them, and picking their mind, it's a great experience for me.